Welcome back everybody to another All Things Nerd video. As always, my name is Nathan. Today we are going to start an adventure of exploring classic World of Warcraft until midnight drops, because I'm still working on a few other videos when it comes to retail, but it's going to take some time for me to push out because well, I'm trying to figure out some ways to get out of bounds in certain raids and dungeons and all that, and I'm going to have videos for you in the future, don't you worry. But yeah, today I have something special. Now, I have been kind of a critic and a big critic about player housing. I'm not a huge fan of player housing, but I know some of you are, and that's okay. I don't like it. You like it. That's cool. We're agree to disagree. Now, it's not that I hate it. It's just not my favorite thing in the world. I would rather do other stuff in World of Warcraft retail. And you know me, I'd rather go on an adventure in OB. I'd rather do questing. I'd rather do other things. So some of you enjoy player housing. Now, if you enjoy player housing, this video is going to be for you today, because we're going to be taking a look at the history of player housing as we go explore. And let's take a look around, and we're going to talk about how Blizzard developed player housing and what it turned into. Now, you may notice I am a floating human in Stormwind. I am playing on I don't know, I guess you could say it's not a private server. It's just an engine that I'm using for Wrath of the Lich King. And we're going to go take a look around, and I'm going to show you guys the original player housing portal, which is in front of me. And we're going to talk about a brief history. So welcome back to All Things Nerd, and I'll see you guys in just a second. All right, guys. So let's talk about player housing for a minute. Now, this is one of those topics that really never goes away, and every expansion, every BlizzCon, every Q&A, someone asks or has asked in the future, or in the past, I should say, is player housing coming? And Blizzard has always given some sort of version of, like, you know, the idea, but they weren't really ever fixed on a foundation. Now, but here's the thing. A lot of people forgot that player housing has actually been a part of WoW's DNA since very early on, and it's just never taken the form people expected. So let's rewind like way back. Now, one of the earliest and most fascinating pieces of WoW's history is the original Stormwind housing portal, right? So that's where we're at right now. This is the housing portal for the original gate that was blocking the entrance. There's the portal here. You had the two lampposts, and it was over here in the next to Old Town and between the trade district. Now, we are currently enabled flying, but we can run on the ground for a second. Now, I have 10 times speed enabled, so I might go a little fast, but here's a close-up view of what the player housing portal actually looked like. Now, back in the very early days of development, we're talking pre-launch, early alpha stuff, Stormwind City actually had a portal that led to an instance housing area. And the idea was pretty straightforward for players who would have their own personal space tied to the capital city where they could decorate, store items, and basically have a home in Azeroth. Now, if we were going to go behind the portal, this is what it would look like. Now, there was nothing here. The portal would lead to nowhere. Now, I don't know if at one time this portal was ever actually active and working. You know, Blizzard might have put that in the game at one point. It's just the gate was locked and players actually couldn't get behind the gate to get to the housing that they wanted to get to. Now, if you ever hear older players talk about a mysterious portal in Stormwind that it used to go somewhere, this is what they're talking about, right? So for those of you that are newer to retail, you just started World of Warcraft, you haven't been around for many expansions, this is what the old player housing portal used to be. Now you can see the sound is still here, which I thought was interesting. So you can hear the portal sound is there and it's active, but you can't actually use it. Now, the system was never finished, and Blizzard quickly ran into technical problems, server limitations, and design questions, and they didn't have good answers for it yet. So like they would ask questions like how many instances, how many customizable, how do you stop cities from feeling empty? So instead of cutting it cleanly, they just sealed it up. And the portal stayed in the game files for a long time and even existed physically in Stormwind for a while, which only fueled rumors for years. From the very start, Blizzard wanted player housing, and they just didn't know how to make it work in an MMO at WoW scale. But today, we have actual player housing, right? Which is in the retail world. So from going from this to what we have now, it's pretty extraordinary, I think. I'm also giving you kind of a good view of what old Stormwind used to look like for those of you that are not OG players. Now, I'm going to have a lot more videos to come in terms of exploring the old world of Azeroth. And I'm excited because I've never done actual videos on it yet. So I'm definitely going to give you guys a different look at things. Now, let's talk about something real quick. During Vanilla, Burning Crusade, and Wrath, Blizzard had a very intentional choice. They wanted the world itself to feel alive, right? That's why they wanted to bring player housing to begin with. Cities full of players, people showing off mounts, guilds hanging out in public spaces, random encounters in the open world. But the traditional player housing tends to pull people out of shared spaces. If everyone's sitting in their own instance house, cities feel dead. So Blizzard was terrified of that, and honestly, they weren't wrong to be. So instead of housing, WoW leaned into identity through gear, titles, mounts, and reputation, and your character was your house. In a way, you showed who you were by standing in Ironforge or Orgrimmar wearing raid gear, but the desire for personal space never went away. So, you know, I agree that your player is your house, right? And I think that's one thing that I miss about World of Warcraft. See, the reason I'm not a huge fan of player housing is not only because I just don't enjoy it in a, you know, technical term. It's just not for me, but I think that we should get back to your player being the adventure, right? Your player having the raid gear, your player having everything that they want to have. Now we're getting to, you know, mounts that cost $100 and you can have a auction house on you at all times. Like, I understand why people are frustrated with retail and what Blizzard's turning the game into. I just wish we'd go back to kind of some of the basics, right? I'm not trying to live in the old world, right? Classic was classic, vanilla was vanilla for a reason. Okay, I want to jump to the future here in 2026. Coming from, you know, classic vanilla WoW as we were in Stormwind. Now, I believe that Blizzard's first attempt at player housing, or really first real attempt, was in Warlords of Draenor. And a lot of people forget that Garrisons, you know, really felt like Blizzard was trying to say something. Like they were saying, hey, let's try this out. Let's see if the housing is going to work. Now, remember, Garrisons were WoW's first true full-scale attempt at player housing. You know, you had your own instance base, you built structures, recruited followers, custom layouts, and progressed it over time. Right now, I believe, and this is my own opinion, on paper, that this was player housing in its full form that they were trying to get to launch off the ground. In practice, it was a little complicated, right? And I think most of us would probably agree. Now, the good parts were real. Garrisons felt personal. You had NPCs that belonged to you. You unlocked buildings, decorations, and bonuses, and it felt good to grow something from scratch, right? So like for mine, for example, you have different decorations from Halloween. I have pumpkins sitting around. I have different things from Hallows Eve. And that's just my own personal Garrison taste that I like to have on. Now, the problems to Garrisons, though, were pretty massive, I think. Players barely left their Garrisons. If you remember playing back in Worlds of Draenor, you would be in there all the time. Capital cities became ghost towns during Worlds of Draenor as well. Like nobody went there because you'd be in your garrison. You'd be spending all your time there. And I truly believe that social interaction dropped as well. And the system started feeling more like a mobile game than in a MMO. And that's kind of one of my problems I see with player housing as well, is I don't want it to become a mobile game. And that's kind of where I'm seeing WoW going in a certain opinion. Now, I heard some of your guys' comments. Some of you think my take is cringe. Some of you guys think it's stupid that I'm making a video on this. Okay, that's fine. You can agree to disagree with me all you want. It's not going to change my opinion. But, you know, Blizzard accidentally created something. I believe they created the exact thing they were afraid of for years back in Garrisons. And I think it's still true today with player housing. Maybe we just haven't seen it fully grown to a scope of what it is, but I think we're going to get there. And, you know, once Warlords ended, like, you know, Worlds of Draenor, Garrisons did too. So, you know, we didn't see player housing for a long time, and especially up until now, which is in the Midnight expansion. All right, another thing I want to touch on real quick is Legion learned from Garrisons, right? Now, instead of individual housing, Blizzard introduced class-based shared specs, which were order halls. And these weren't personal houses, but they scratched the same itch, but I believe in a smarter way. Now, you had one, a home base tied to your class fantasy, two, a progression over the expansion, which is one of the greatest expansions to ever be, which is Legion, and most people can agree on that. Or if not, the best expansion there ever was. There was also customization through artifacts, champions, and cosmetic unlocks, and you had a sense of belonging without isolating players. Now, you weren't alone. You were with other paladins, warlocks, druids. As for me, I'm in my demon hunter order hall, right? Whatever you played was yours, and you were able to interact with people. And still to this day, you're still able to interact with others as you see them walking around the order halls, and you're both playing the same class. Now, order halls were widely loved because they kept the community aspect intact while still giving players a place that felt meaningful, right? Now, in a lot of ways, this was Blizzard saying, okay, we still don't want player housing, but we hear you, which things are starting to really shape up. And you can see the direction that they were headed in order to get to player housing that we have today, which is in retail 2026. Okay, I'm going to touch on Shadowlands real quick and Dragonflight so we can keep moving forward, because I know this video is getting long. But I wanted to say Shadowlands took another step. I'm not going to venture out to the Shadowlands. It wasn't a big expansion for a lot of people. It wasn't a very big loved expansion either. It had a lot of problems. I get it. For me, it was one of the most beautiful expansions in terms of the artifacts and the atmosphere and the way everything looked with the, with the covenants and all that. So I thought different aspects of Shadowlands was good, but Shadowlands introduced covenant sanctums and gave players a hub tied to their chosen faction, and you could upgrade features, unlock cosmetics, improve transport, and see visible progression over time. But again, it wasn't yours, right? And I think that's what Blizzard's trying to tackle in player housing today. The problem is with sanctum and covenants was that you shared it, you couldn't really decorate it, and you couldn't make it personal, right? It was more like borrowing a house than an owning one in like today's standards. Now, by this point, it was clear Blizzard was circling the idea of housing, but still hesitant to fully commit. Now, let's talk about Dragonflight. Dragonflight was interesting because it basically skipped the housing conversation entirely. There were no garrisons, there was no sanctums, there was no order halls. Instead, Blizzard went all in an open world system, dragon riding, and player freedom, which most of us loved. I loved the Dragonflight expansion. I thought it was one of the best expansions they've had in a long time. Coming from Shadowlands, I know a lot of people were happy. Oh my gosh, I'm getting attacked by the sewer beast. I didn't even know the sewer beast still exists. And gosh, she's powerful. What is this? All right, sorry about that. I got attacked by the sewer beast. I didn't even know the sewer beast still existed. I haven't seen the sewer beast forever. That is so funny. Look, it's still swimming this way. I forgot that the sewer beast exists. All right, anyways, let's go around this way. All right, back to what we were talking about. Now, all that stuff worked in Dragonflight, but for players who love immersion, role player, or just having a space that feels like home, the absence was noticeable. So I get it. At the same time, Blizzard introduced something very telling, which was dragon customization. And we all know that, right? Dragon customization, there was much more comfortable now with deep cosmetic driven systems that don't affect power, which is exactly what player housing would be. So they kind of made up for it in a sense. Okay, this brings me to my very last point. I'm not going to sit here and dump on player housing. I'm not going to sit here and say how bad it is or whatever. You guys know I'm not crazy about it, but I know some of you love it. So I respect that. You get involved, you want to create things. I think that's cool. You should take your creativity and make the game what you want of it. Now, here we are, almost 20 years of maybe someday World of Warcraft finally has player housing. And honestly, it feels kind of surreal saying that out loud. Not gonna lie. Now, what makes this hit different is that Blizzard didn't just flip a switch and drop housing into the game. They took the long way there. You can see the fingerprints of everything that came before. The old Stormwind, Portal, Garrisons, Order Halls, Covenants, all of it has led to what we have now. And the biggest difference is housing and merchant doesn't just pull you out of Azeroth, right? It lives inside it. So yes, I will agree with you that player housing does bring somewhat of life to the game, to a happy place that we all love, which is Azeroth. Now, some of us like different things. I like OOB adventures. I like questing. I like going back and doing some of the older expansion of questing. Now, some of you have really begged for player housing, and I respect it. Now, you're still encouraged to be in cities. You still see other players. Housing feels optional, personal, and cosmetic. Something you do because you want to, not because you have to log in and maintain it like a chore, right? Now, for me, that might be a chore. Some of you love doing it. For role players, I would say this is huge. And for collectors, it's a dream. And for a longtime players, it feels like Blizzard finally closed a chapter they opened back in 2004. Now, that sealed off Stormwind portal was never really forgotten. It was just waiting for the game to catch up. Housing in Midnight doesn't feel rushed, in my opinion. It doesn't feel like Garrison 2.0. It feels like Blizzard finally figured out how to give players a home without breaking the world. And you know what? Honestly, if this is the version of player housing we had to wait 2 decades for, it was probably worth the wait. And I know a lot of you feel that way. So thank you guys for watching this video. As always, my name is Nathan from AllThingsNerd. Even though I'm not the biggest player housing person, I know some of you really love it. You've been waiting for it for years, and Blizzard has finally gave it to you. Whether I speak highly of it or don't, I hope you make the most of it and what you do with it. Maybe I need to give it a second chance. Maybe I need to not just write it off altogether. And maybe I just need to get better at editing my home. I don't know. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for letting me dive into the history of player housing. As always, my name is Nathan. I will see you guys all in the next adventure back in Azeroth. Take care.